Like many of you, I grew up poor. I went to school, then got a job, and wanted to make money, but I didn't have any knowledge or real skills. What I really needed to do was reprogram my own brain to become successful. In this video, I'm going to show you exactly how I did that. The first thing that I had to realize was the power of words. So one positive or one negative word can immediately affect someone's entire day. And it does a lot to your own subconscious, how you think. Your inner voice is important. What are the words that you're using to describe yourself, even if you might not be conscious about it? That's the first thing. A positive word can inspire, it can motivate, it can maybe even heal. A negative word can cause harm, pain, and of course damage. So paying attention to your words is extremely important. I'm not sure why, but our brain has a tendency to give weight to negative words more than positive words. I guess old habits die hard, and negativity is certainly a strong one. There's a story of two wolves. It's a Cherokee Indian legend illustrating the most important battle of our lives, and that's the one between good and bad within us. An old Cherokee is teaching his grandson about life. "A fight is going on inside of me," he said to the boy. "It is a terrible fight, and it is between two wolves. One is evil. He is anger, envy, sorrow, regret, greed, arrogance, self-pity, guilt, resentment, inferiority, lies, false pride, superiority, and ego. The other is good. He is joy, peace, love, hope, serenity, humility, kindness, benevolence, empathy, generosity, truth, compassion, and faith." The same fight is going on inside of you and inside every other person too. And the grandson thought about this for a minute and asked his grandfather, "Which wolf will win?" And the old Cherokee simply replied, "The one you feed." I like this story because it's a story about self-assessment. It's a story about awareness and inner conflict that we all have. Many of us don't pay enough attention to our thoughts because we need to watch our thoughts, because our thoughts, they become our words. Whatever is going on in our own head, whatever software you have going on in your own brain, those are your thoughts, right or wrong. It's your own programming. So I felt like I had to unlearn and then relearn or reprogram my brain based on the way I grew up. Words ultimately become your behavior, and your behavior ultimately become your habits. And your habits ultimately become your values. And your values ultimately become your destiny. So from my own standpoint, I had a lot of limiting beliefs like a lot of other people. One of them was, of course, around money. My parents grew up with none, hardly any. In fact, my very first suit was from a secondhand store I bought for $5. I used to shop for clothes at secondhand stores. My parents had a very limiting belief around money. They always used to say, "We can't afford that." And it was true. They couldn't. So that was one of the things I had to change, was how can I go from "I can't afford that" to "how can I afford that?" It was a very powerful thing that I had to change, something that I grew up with. So I grew up the same way. I grew up with scarcity as opposed to abundance in my thinking. I always tried to manage my expenses. And I think that's what most of YouTube and a lot of the gurus do. They say, cut out 1 cup of coffee, cut up your credit cards, and start to live within your means. So it drives me nuts when people say that, because the key to freedom is actually the opposite. The key to freedom is to manage your expenses, of course, but the key is, how do I figure out ways to make unlimited income to be able to take care of all those expenses? If you focus on multiple passive income streams, as an example, then the expenses take care of themselves. But what most people do is they hit the brakes and they start to manage their expenses. And I'm not saying you shouldn't manage your expenses. What I'm saying is you need to be focused on income. And once you focus on income, then you start to see that the income more than takes care of any expenses that you might have. So the question I always had is, How do I change my own thoughts or reprogram my thoughts? The first one was just addressing your inner critic, actually being aware or being present on what it is that you might actually be experiencing at that moment. Some people don't even go that deep. Some people just operate on the surface and never really dig too deep. One of the greatest books that I read by Anthony DeMello was a book called Awareness. And he used to say, awareness, awareness, awareness. You need to have a reality check. Who are you? What do you represent? What financial situation are you in? How are your relationships? How is your health? Those are self-awareness things. And until you do that, take a hard look at yourself, then nothing will get fixed because you'll always be pointing the finger out and be playing the victim. Even the Bible says this in Proverbs, chapter 4, verse 23. Be careful how you think. Your life is shared by your thoughts. What I had to learn was I had to learn to be the observer of my own thoughts. I had to actually step outside of myself and observe myself in whatever situation it might be in, whether that was positive or negative. And then I always took a look at why was this happening, in a positive manner or a negative manner. And I always looked at myself as the problem. I always looked at myself as the one that could solve it in the next interaction. The key there is not to analyze it or argue with it. It's just merely to be aware of it. Don't analyze it or argue with it. Just merely be aware of it. Because what happens is you start to use logic and justify your actions or whatever might be the situation you're in. You need to let this come and let it go and just be present and be aware of whatever is happening. And the very last thing that helped a lot was I started to take a look at the actual words I was using. I was initially using words that were scarce-based, and then I had to move to abundance. Words like can't or try or never or no, or don't. And once you start to realize that you're using those on a daily basis, those are very limiting words. And once you start to replace those words with better things, then as we've all heard, your words become flesh. Even Yoda, of all people, says, try not, do, or do not. There is no try. Changing your hardwiring or reprogramming does not happen overnight. You need to just start with small little wins. That's all. Just start with one small little thing. And over a period of time, you'll see things will change for you. The world will open up and things will get a lot less heavy and more abundance will start pouring in. I just made a video for my 20-year-old self on the advice I would give to get rich 10 times faster. If you're a young person watching this, then this video is a must watch. Check it out here.